I only made a few minor modifications to the family fishing boat, but I didn't expect it to scare the life out of my old man. How on earth does a fishing boat have naval cannons and 2 machine gun turrets? What the hell? There's even a missile launcher. Has this fishing boat committed a capital crime? My dad, right then and there, was ready to drag me off to surrender, but the only reason I did this was that in my past life my dad encountered a pirate attack while at sea, and our entire family was wiped out. Reborn. I didn't stop my father from going to sea. Instead, I used my cheat to craft a suite of naval weapons, transforming the fishing boat into a brute. The day before my father set sail, I brought the weapons I'd handcrafted straight to the dock and, lifting my chin with conviction, said to my dad, "Dad, with these, our cargo ship won't have to fear pirates on the open ocean anymore. That one on the far end is an AK-630 dual 30mm close-in weapon system. Fighting pirates with it is as satisfying as using a kitchen knife to mince meat. This here is a QLG-10A anti-personnel grenade launcher, specifically for cleaning up those few stray pirates who might try to swim up to the ship. And there are 2 14.5mm heavy machine guns. No matter how many pirates are in the Gulf of Aden, we'll take down just as many." But my father, Lin Jinglan, was completely stunned. Though he never served in the military, he'd been in the shipping industry for years, seen plenty of warships, and could tell at a glance that these barrels and gun mounts were configurations meant for naval vessels. Lin Jinglan panicked instantly. "My little ancestor, stop talking. Where did you steal these from? This stuff is worth a death sentence. You just got into Tsinghua University. Our family can't make a mistake like this. Let's go. I'm taking you to turn yourself in to the police right now." As he spoke, my father tried to drag me away. I yanked my hand away. "Dad, what are you blathering about? Who stole anything? I crafted all of this with my own 2 hands. As I was saying this, my uncle Lin Jinglan strolled over, stared at the gear, and chuckled. "Jinglan, where did you get these movie props? They look quite authentic." Lin Jinglan paused and quickly asked, "Big brother, you say these are movie props? Could they be real? I've seen them on TV. This stuff looks fake at a glance. Besides, Jinglan is only a teenager. Where would he get such things? Just ignore his nonsense." Seeing his older brother speak so confidently, Lin Jinglan couldn't help but laugh and cry, raising his hand to slap me on the forehead. "You little brat, you've read a few extra books and now you dare to spout such nonsense to your own father. Dad, these really are real. Why won't you believe me?" All right, Dad believes you. Just load them onto the ship." Lin Jinglan humored me, but he had already taken out his walkie-talkie to call others over to help. Seeing that our relatives all wore expressions of shock similar to his own moments ago, Lin Jinglan immediately smiled and explained to everyone, "Don't panic, guys. These are all just props. Jinglan is afraid we'll encounter pirates and brought them to scare people, just like a scarecrow in a field." Aha, once they heard that, everyone breathed a sigh of relief, hurried to help load the weapons onto the boat, and kept praising how realistic the props looked. I was completely speechless, but I couldn't be bothered to explain further. If they want to think they're props, fine. As long as they can protect everyone when the time comes, it saves me from my dad reporting me to the authorities. The next day, the cargo ship officially departed the island as planned, heading toward another dock, to pass through a military inspection station. Before long, at the station Commander Wang Bingi was looking at files in his office when a soldier suddenly rushed in, panting for air, bursting through the office door. Commander! Big trouble. An unidentified armed cargo ship has appeared at sea. It looks like a regular merchant vessel on the outside, but it's equipped with a dual-barreled 6-tube close-in weapon system." Wang Bingi's brain went numb. A dual-barreled 6-tube close-in weapon system? If that thing fires at close range, every ship in the harbor won't stand a chance. Wang Bingi raced to the observation deck like a gust of wind, and sure enough, he saw that the weapons were exactly as the soldier had described, with a caliber likely around 30mm. They had to evacuate the civilians immediately. At the same time, request support from the higher-ups. What exactly are the people at the radar station doing? How could a security breach of this magnitude even happen? Wang Bingi was anxious and furious. Just then, another soldier looked up and shouted, "Station Chief, the ocean-going freighter Yunhai, ID number 89757, is requesting to enter the berth for inspection." Wang Bingi paused, then raised his high-powered binoculars again. "And it's such high-end equipment, too? Shipborne equipment?" Wang Bingi immediately turned back to his office and opened his computer to verify the cargo ship's registration information. After reviewing the files, he finally picked up the communication system to call the Yunhai freighter. "I am Wang Bingi, chief of the Haizhou Military Inspection Station. The weapons on your ship. What exactly was going on? After receiving the call, Lin Jinglan explained the claim that the props were meant to scare off pirates, telling the story exactly as it happened. Wang Bingi finally felt a bit of relief after hearing it. Dock the ship. Park it in a more remote spot first, and then I will lead my team to inspect it in person. Before long, the Yunhai slowly moved into the berth. Lin Jinglan hurriedly handed the relevant documents and certificates to Wang Bingi. Wang Bingi took the files and carefully verified them again. After checking all the documents, he couldn't find a single fault, so he immediately gave the order to board the ship with his inspection team. As he carefully looked around, his eyes landed on the double-barreled CIWS on the deck, and he stumbled. Based on his years of military instinct, the more he looked, the less it seemed like a prop. So he turned to stare at Lin Jinglan. Captain Lin, how did you come up with the idea of installing these on the ship, and you claim they are just for scaring pirates? When asked this, Lin Jinglan looked innocent. My son reminded me that the Gulf of Aden isn't safe, so he arranged it for me. I was shocked at first, too. My son is very bright. He was even this year's top scorer in the college entrance exam in Haijiu. A top scorer? Is your son named Lin Jinglan? Yes, that's him. Wang Bingi had children at home who also took the exam this year. He had heard of that name before. Just then, several soldiers who had been inspecting other areas returned to report. The cargo check is fine, but there is a locked room at the back of the cabin. As soon as he spoke, Wang Bingi's face darkened, and Lin Jinglan looked confused. The back cabin was just a small utility closet, usually used for storing trash. So why was it inexplicably locked? Seeing the tension rise, I stepped forward to intervene. That room is a monitoring room I set up temporarily, with added air radar and a sonar positioning system. It contains 2 computers. I locked it when I left. Of course, I only told half the truth and didn't reveal the full details. The real purpose of those 2 computers was to assist the large weapons outside in quickly identifying enemy fire and launching an attack. Finally, I led them toward the back cabin. He opened the door, and Wang Bingi first glanced at the monitoring screens on the computers. Then his gaze fell on 2 wooden crates in the corner. With that one glance, his expression changed drastically. Inside were 2 sets of 30mm CIWS weapons, plus general-purpose machine guns. The metallic texture and the craftsmanship, these guns looked incredibly real. He reached out to pull one out, holding it close to examine it thoroughly, but at a critical structure, he felt a gap. Wang Bingi finally breathed a secret sigh of relief. For a split second, he almost thought they were all real. Fortunately, the key parts were missing. Even if you tried everything, it would be impossible to fire a single bullet. Seeing his expression soften, I quickly added, I made these while working on the CIWS, using the leftover materials and parts to piece them together. Wang Bingi nodded, not pressing the matter further. After all, the sea hasn't been peaceful lately. An incident happened in the Gulf of Aden just 3 months ago, and cargo ships now are more cautious than ever. Plus, he had checked our records. The Lin family had been fishermen for generations, and their files were clean. Ultimately, he picked up his pen and signed, letting us pass. But before leaving, he looked back at the CIWS on the deck again. The thing looked far too intimidating. Remember to cover it with a tarp or something so others don't misunderstand. Yes, yes, Lin Jinglan nodded repeatedly, watching as Wang Bingi and his team, as their backs faded into the distance. I couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. Fortunately, I had dismantled all the key components in advance, otherwise we would have been in deep trouble today. Soon, the Yunhai set sail once again. I stood at the railing, lost in thought as I gazed at the boundless sea, when suddenly a hand slapped onto my shoulder. Son, this voyage could bring in millions in profit. Once we get back, focus on your studies and don't worry about the family business. When I'm too old to work, I'll get to enjoy the life you provide. Looking at the smile on my father's face, I clenched my fists tightly, my heart surging with a towering hatred for the pirates. Who would have thought that such a simple hope would be reduced to endless agony beneath the flames and gunfire of pirates? In my past life, he tormented me day and night for 4 full years until I died of heartbreak. So, in this life, I didn't try to talk my father out of this trip because I want those pirates to know what it means to pay in blood. Evil deeds lead to self-destruction. Days at sea were monotonous. 20+ days later, the cargo ship finally entered Somali waters, and my heart tightened. To spot the pirates' movements early, I spent all day scanning the horizon with binoculars. Not long after I started watching today, I noticed a strange wave pattern jumping in the distance, a change that caught my attention immediately. Because normal ocean waves are usually long and cresting, but this clearly looked like the wake of a yacht or an assault boat. I frowned. gripping my binoculars tightly, and sure enough, I saw a small black dot in the distance accelerating. In our direction. Pirates, it had to be pirates. I turned around and ran to the cabin. Dad, there seem to be pirates to the southeast. They're coming very fast. They must have locked onto us. Come and take a look. Lin Jinglan, who had been dozing, shot up at the words, took the binoculars from my hand, and ran to the deck to peer into the distance. But the moment he looked, Lin Jinglan's face went white. Dozens of assault boats, each carrying 4 or 5 men, all armed with weapons, AK rifles, submachine guns, and even rocket launchers. Almost in an instant, Lin Jinglan hit the alarm button nearby. Attention all hands! Attention all hands! Pirates are approaching in speedboats from our direction. Increase power to maximum. Get us away from the pirates as fast as possible. Suddenly, the crew descended into panic, staring at the distance in shock. Are we going to die? I don't want to die. Let's surrender and give them the cargo. Maybe we can save our lives. I don't want to die. I haven't even had a girlfriend yet. Captain Lin, tell them we can give them the money. Listening to the panicked cries of the crew, all of you, be quiet. Do you really think begging will make them spare us? Having said that, Lin Jinglan grabbed the satellite phone to call for help from local authorities. However, after they heard his report, they merely said they would send someone to search. Hearing the perfunctory and indifferent voice on the other end, his face turned ashen. He didn't tell the crew, but instead called back to the Haizhou military checkpoint. When Wang Bingi heard it was the Yunhai calling for help, he panicked, immediately shouting to the soldiers beside him, "Quick, contact the local maritime guard and ask what the situation is." However, a moment later they replied, "Station chief, they said they've already dispatched a team, but because of the distance, it will take at least 4 hours to arrive." Wang Bingi slammed his hand down on the console, thought for a moment and continued, "Quick, check if there are any patrolling frigates near the Yunhai. Tell them Chinese citizens are facing pirates. And request support." A soldier nearby clattered away on the keyboard, and after some operations discovered that the American Folke frigate squadron was patrolling nearby. But when they heard the request, they mocked. "Your Chinese citizens are in danger from pirates. What does that have to do with us? If you want us to intervene, it's not impossible, but have your Chinese government apply to our American officials. Once the request is approved, we'll go to the rescue." Wang Bingi nearly bit through his lip in rage, deeply feeling the pain of a weak nation having no diplomacy. But just at that moment, a soldier nearby suddenly said in alarm, "It's bad, station chief." The satellite signal near our current sea area was suddenly blocked, and within the range of the Yunhai, all satellite signals became unusable. Upon hearing the soldier's report, he felt as if struck by lightning, his face turning deathly pale. How could he not understand what this meant? It was those guys who had cut off the satellite signals themselves. They were the true protectors of those pirates. Thinking of that genius boy, Wang Bingi slumped into his chair, consumed by utter despair. Meanwhile, aboard the Yunhai, Lin Jinglan looked at the satellite phone in his hand. The no service, no signal notification signaling extreme despair. He turned to the panicking crowd. "We have no other choice. Rather than waiting to be captured, we should fight them, to buy the children some time to escape." Once these words were spoken, an older man in the crowd stood up. "Yes, that's right. Fight those bastards. Even if we can't beat them, we must give it our all, and tear a chunk out of them. Tell the children to abandon ship as soon as possible, and once in the water, they must not climb back up." The noisy cabin gradually began to quiet down. Some picked up iron bars, others grabbed wooden sticks. Yes, rather than waiting for death, it was better to fight these bastard pirates to the end. Seeing that the crowd was no longer panicking, Lin Jinglan thought about saying his last words to his son, only to find he was missing. Just as he was about to go out and look for him, I rushed into the cabin and shouted to the crowd, "Everyone, do not panic. We can hold off the pirates." Suddenly, everyone turned their eyes toward me. I looked at my father and said earnestly, "Dad, I told you those weapons I installed aren't models. They are real." With that, I moved 2 boxes to the center, and from one of them, I took out a machine gun, followed immediately by taking the key components from the box beside it, and in a few swift motions, I assembled the machine gun. "Please, elders, trust me. I wouldn't gamble with my life and yours." The young men followed my movements to assemble all the parts inside the boxes. In the eyes of those on the ship, a group of pirates on the sea was whistling, driving speedboats forward, their eyes filled with madness and ferocity. However, as their assault craft were about to reach 3 nautical miles from the cargo ship, the look on one of the lookouts turned ugly, and he quickly ran to their boss, Hassan Saleh, to report what he had seen. Hassan, chewing on a cigar, took the binoculars from a pirate's hand and took a look, his brow furrowing immediately. Why does this ship have naval guns? And so many people manning general-purpose machine guns? Wasn't it supposed to be a cargo ship? But looking closer, Hassan smiled. Although those people were holding guns, they looked panicked. Some didn't even have guns, but were holding iron bars and wooden sticks. Hassan felt as though he had seen through the ruse, and the expression on his face grew more excited. He calmly lowered the binoculars and chuckled. Don't panic. These idiots are trying to fool us. Even though they hold weapons, there is fear on their faces, and some are even holding sticks. It's clearly a smokescreen, just some props or decorations they grabbed from somewhere. Brothers, charge. Let's show them what real guns are. Upon hearing this, the pirate lackeys realized the truth, and their eyes, looking at Hassan, grew even more adoring as they accelerated their assault craft toward the Yunhai. Meanwhile, on the Yunhai cargo ship, after I distributed the machine guns to the crew for self-defense, I went to the pre-prepared weapon control room, locked the target via radar, and slowly waited for those people to step into the final kill zone. It was a pity that this was rushed, but at 300 meters, I began to count down in my heart. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. As my silent count ended, the naval guns on the deck emitted a mechanical clatter, followed by fire spewing forth, mixed with bullets. The lead assault craft that were running the fastest exploded instantly, violent fireballs erupting on the sea surface. In an instant, more than a dozen of their assault craft were wiped out. The remaining pirates, stunned by the scene, some didn't even have time to turn around before they were sent into a chaotic panic. Falling into the sea, only a few managed to flee in disarray, completely stripped of the aggressive momentum they had upon arrival. On the Yunhai, the crew looked at everything in disbelief, followed by an eruption of triumphant cheers. We won. We won. We actually won. Those pirates were driven away by us. These weapons are real. They're real. We aren't going to die. The pirates ran too fast. I didn't even get a chance to fire my gun. Everyone was immersed in the ecstatic joy of surviving the ordeal, laughing and weeping. The fear hadn't vanished, but it was shifting. On the other side, the pirates fleeing frantically still hadn't recovered from the shock. Demons! I want to go home to my mother. Hassan clutched his shot thigh, endured the intense pain, and pulled out his satellite phone. Once he had a signal, he immediately dialed a number. Boss, I suspect we've been double-crossed. They clearly said it was a merchant ship, but that was obviously a terrifying pseudo-warship. We lost more than 20 speedboats and nearly 100 men. The boss on the other end of the line, swirling his red wine while listening to Hassan's report, flew into a rage. Those guys actually dared to provide us with fake intel. Take your people back to recuperate. I'll go ask them for an explanation. With that, he made a call directly to the Fok carrier commander, Ross Coleman. However, when Ross heard that the Dragon Country ship actually had warship weapons, his eyes lit up immediately. Ignoring the other party's questioning, he hung up the phone and immediately sent an order to the Fok frigate. Set off immediately, head to the region of the Dragon Country freighter, Yunhai. That bunch of idiots actually modified a merchant ship into a military frigate. That's a violation of international treaties. Go over, take photos as evidence, then sink them directly and seize the cargo. I had been following news about the Gulf of Aden. Around 2010, there were rumors that Western countries were colluding with pirates. Coupled with the suddenly interrupted satellite signal earlier, it's hard not to be suspicious. Quick, stop, disassemble all the naval gun barrels. Just as we finished, we saw from a distance that the American Fok frigate was approaching. It really is this troublemaker. A flash of inspiration struck me, and I turned to look at my father. Quick, have someone send an open text telegram saying, "Thank you to the American warship for everything they have done for us. We will certainly do our best to express our gratitude to them. Remember to send several copies." As these words were spoken, Lin Jinglan was stunned, and the rest of the Lin family were left standing there in a daze. We drove the pirates away ourselves, why thank them? Seeing their reactions, I didn't hide anything and explained directly. Dad, think about it, why are American warships patrolling nearby while the pirates here are still so rampant? Trust me, it will work. On the other side, on the American Fok frigate, Captain Charles Walker looked at the chaotic sea and then at the distant Yunhai, a smug smile curling at the corner of his mouth. As long as he caught up to the Yunhai and took pictures, it would be a great achievement. Just as Charles was fantasizing about a promotion, Fok carrier Commander Ross suddenly called. "Fok, what on earth have you done? Why are those Dragon Country people Saying it was you who set an ambush to deal with the pirates? You idiot, when have I ever helped the Dragon Country people fight pirates? Listening to Ross's roar, Charles looked bewildered. Just then, a subordinate suddenly delivered a telegram. Seeing the content, Charles felt his whole world collapse. Thank you to the American frigate for helping the Dragon Country freighter repel the pirates. We will donate 10,000 RMB as a token of thanks. We hope the Americans won't mind. Charles smashed his fist onto the table, feeling absolutely enraged. He wanted to take the opportunity to finish off the Yunhai, but if they could receive that telegram, it meant the Yunhai. The message about the delay has already gone out. If we make a move now, the trouble will be massive. After a while longer, the local Coast Guard finally arrived, but that police boat, instead of coming over to the Yunhai to inquire, it stopped right beside the American frigate. It seems these guys also received our encrypted telegram and thought it really was the Americans who took action. Now that they are standing there, sucking up and trying to get on good terms, I wonder if the captain of the American frigate, upon hearing the praise from the local Coast Guard, will be happy or so angry he'll spit blood. However, at that very moment, a ding sounded in my brain. Congratulations to the host. You have successfully completed the novice weapon trial, neutralized 102 pirates, and received an S++ rating. Reward, 3,000 points. Looking at the system interface in front of me, I couldn't help but be stunned. After using the weapon once, I thought if only I could have the technology of the American warship. As soon as this thought arose in my heart, the system's notification sound rang in my ears. Yes, host, this system can deduce processes based on physical objects. Once you board the enemy frigate, you can consume points to perform a deduction. Note, logic repeated in original, combined. 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 You can consume points to deduce the process via physical objects by boarding the other ship, to analyze the warship's technology. Upon hearing this, I was overcome with ecstasy. The warship in front of me is an American active-duty vessel containing many core technologies that the Dragon Kingdom likely doesn't have yet. I must take this opportunity to snatch a batch. I couldn't help but rub my hands together. On the other side, Ross, the commander of the frigate Faka, was now absolutely furious. It was clearly a perfect scheme to kill 3 birds with 1 stone. So why are we the ones taking the hit? Usually, with tactics like this, they've watched so many, and these pirate cargo ships were always fine, yet today we took a massive fall. More seriously, now that the thank you telegram has been sent, using pirates to rob cargo ships from other countries will likely be impossible. Furthermore, those pirates hold such grudges that perhaps in the future, American cargo ships might be targeted for retaliation by the pirates. A perfectly good way to make money has been cut off just like that. Meanwhile, on the sea, the American warship and the local Coast Guard vessel were slowly sailing toward the Yunhai. After the ship stabilized, a middle-aged man with the features of a Dragon Kingdom citizen boarded the Yunhai. It was actually Wang Jingming, the Dragon Kingdom's ambassador to the region. Looking at everyone on the Yunhai, Wang Jingming's voice was filled with irrepressible emotion. You have really suffered. If it weren't for the insufficient naval power of our Dragon Kingdom, this situation never should have happened. Everyone was very touched by Wang Jingming's arrival. In truth, even without him saying it, everyone understood it wasn't that the Dragon Kingdom didn't want to rescue us, but that the distance made it unrealistic. Moreover, Wang Jingming coming over with the local Coast Guard immediately was already enough. Seeing that the pleasantries were almost over, I walked straight up to Wang Jingming. Ambassador Wang, thank you for coming in person. However, it was only because the American frigate provided timely support that we were able to escape danger. So, I would like to ask you to take us to the American warship. I want to thank them. Face to face. Wang Jingming fell silent for a moment. In truth, he didn't believe the Americans had come to the rescue. He originally wanted to ask for clarification, but with the local Coast Guard present, it was inconvenient. Hearing me say this, his suspicions were dispelled, and he nodded in agreement. Soon, with Wang Jingming's help, my father and I successfully boarded the frigate Faka. What no one knew, however, was that in the first second of boarding, a series of system notifications rang in my brain. Congratulations to the host for successfully boarding the frigate Faka. Now automatically analyzing the frigate's phased array radar, gas turbine units, and other core technologies. Analyzing the launch system. The system structure is being parsed, progress at 25%, listening to the voice in my mind. I could barely contain the smile on my face, and before long, we met them. Captain Charles of the frigate. Only Charles had an exceptionally cold expression. Sir, thank you so much. You Americans truly are the police officers of Earth. It was your fearless stance that helped us and ensured our safety. I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to you. Charles listened to these words, the veins on his forehead throbbing with rage. It felt as sickening as swallowing a fly, yet this fly, he could neither swallow nor spit out. Once he denied it, it might expose their collusion with the pirates. And what made it even more unbearable was, this teenager before him, while the words sounded harmless, there was something strangely sarcastic about them. Charles gritted his teeth. Protecting civilians is what we Americans, what soldiers are supposed to do. If there's nothing else, you may return now. Seeing that Charles had already issued a dismissal, but my parsing was still stuck at 90%, I thought for a moment, and pulled a wide smile. Respected sir, to thank you, I have specially composed a song for you. Please let me sing it for you. Listen to me, thank you. Because of you, the 4 seasons are warmed. Because of you, the world is more beautiful. While I dragged out time by singing, I watched the parsing progress, and seeing the progress bar finally hit 100%, I stopped abruptly, then turned and left. Charles was stunned by the suddenly cut off singing. Wait, the song wasn't finished yet. Why did the person suddenly run off? Charles felt like his head was going to explode today. After we returned to the Yunhai, escorted by Wang Jingming and the local Coast Guard, we arrived at the final delivery port, and after handing over the goods and collecting the commission, Wang Jingming organized a grand banquet. At the table, the local police asked directly how the American warship had crushed the pirates, and they were prepared to publicize and report heavily on the incident. I chewed on a duck leg in my hand, and exaggeratedly recounted what happened at sea. When the pirates arrived, we were terrified. You have to know that those things on our ship were just movie props. We had no choice but to grab whatever we could. Some people even used mops to stop the pirates from boarding, and my uncle, while blocking them, was slashed on the arm by a bayonet on their gun, and almost lost his life. Lin Jinglan stared wide-eyed from the side. What is going on? What is this brat babbling about? If I remember correctly, my brother was just too panicked, tripped, and got his arm scratched by a protruding piece of metal on the deck. But it was only a light scratch. However, Lin Jinglan didn't say a word. Instead, he stuffed food into his mouth, terrified that he wouldn't be able to hold back, and burst into laughter. Meanwhile, I was still vividly telling the local police about the scene of the American warship making a grand entrance, how it paved the way, the ship's guns firing in unison. Anyway, it was fierce and majestic. It was omnipotent and capable of anything, as if the US was the most awesome existence on the planet. However, the locals listened and began to sense that something was wrong. Is the US really that powerful? How come decades ago they were beaten all the way back home by the Dragon Country? And the US claims to be Earth's police, but what they actually do, well, that's hard to say. Logically speaking, they should hate the Dragon Country, so why were they so warm-hearted this time? But at this moment, they wouldn't stand up and slap the US in the face. After all, a country like the US that calls itself the hegemon of the planet loves nothing more than gilding its own lily. Now that this story is being spread, they must be thrilled. I'm afraid the US won't be happy for long, because once this gets out, whatever reputation the US had left among the local pirates will likely be completely wiped out. Previously, the Yunhai, the telegram sent out must already be circulating among the top officials of various countries. Ambassador Wang Jingming, send another telegram. Haha, that would be quite interesting. Sure enough, Wang Jingming soon left the table to send the telegram, and I busied myself with eating. Just then, I suddenly saw the crew member Zhang Maokai also stand up, holding his stomach as he left the banquet. I frowned. This guy had been drinking the hardest, constantly shouting about his status, which was quite annoying. A young man, lacking the respect for elders that the seniors showed, right while everyone was celebrating. On the other side of the sea, Wang Bingyi was going frantic. He had done everything he could, but still received no news. He looked out at the distant, shimmering surface of the sea. 10 years for an army, 100 years for a navy. The Dragon Country's navy still has a long road ahead. Even now, we still cannot protect the safety of our own citizens. He felt helpless and pained. Just then, the satellite phone suddenly connected, and Ambassador Wang Jingming's excited voice came through. Old Wang, that kid you mentioned has been found, and everyone on the ship is perfectly fine. So rest assured. Wang Bingyi was overjoyed. Really? That's wonderful. You have no idea how worried I was. However, after the relief, a doubt emerged. Wait, how did they escape? Could it be that the pirates suddenly found their conscience? That can't be right. Those vicious thugs, where would they get a conscience? Old Wang, tell me, what exactly happened? To be honest, I haven't figured it out yet. They said a U.S. frigate went to help, though I don't know why those guys suddenly showed humanity. As the two were talking, a knock-knock-knock sound came at Wang Jingming's door. Before Wang Jingming could hang up, he saw a young man push the door open and walk in, looking at him with a fawning smile. "Mr. Ambassador, I am Zhang Maokai, a laborer on the Yunhai." Upon hearing this, Wang Jingming frowned slightly. A laborer on the Yunhai? Why did that sound so strange? I've read the records of the Yunhai. Isn't it run by the Lin family? Where did a laborer come from? But Wang Jingming didn't say it aloud. Letting Zhang Maokai sit down. "So tell me, what is your main responsibility on their ship?" Hearing this, Zhang Maokai rubbed his hands together. "That's the Lin family's ship. They only treat the Lin family well. I'm an outsider, and they were always mean to me, beating and scolding me, making me do all the hard and dirty work." Zhang Maokai tried his best to smear the Lin family. "I just won't accept it. Why is it that coming from the same village, it's fine that Lin Jinglan studies and wins prizes, but now he's running around on a ship playing with weapons, and everyone praises him? I did so much work quietly, yet everyone turned a blind eye." Zhang Maokai was now extremely frantic. As Wang Jingming listened to Zhang Maokai's vicious tone, his frown deepened. He looked Zhang Maokai up and down. The guy's face looked quite fair and clean, and his hands didn't look like those of a manual laborer. Wang Jingming didn't voice his doubts directly, but nodded, signaling for him to continue. "Mr. Ambassador, you don't know, do you? Lin Jinglan and his people broke the law. Those pirates weren't killed by the Americans at all. It was Lin Jinglan and his crew. What was on that ship weren't models. They were genuine, high-end weapons, all privately built by that guy Lin Jinglan. I saw with my own eyes how they used those weapons to cruelly kill the pirates. They were so vicious, the seawater was stained red for a large area. Is this a cargo ship? I think they are the pirates." Hearing Zhang Maokai's words, Wang Jingming was completely stunned. Not killed by the Americans, but by the people on the cargo ship. And what did I just hear? That teenager built naval cannons and machine guns? How is that possible? Wang Jingming asked hurriedly. "Are you spouting nonsense? That Lin Jinglan, isn't he just a high school student? How could he possibly have the ability to build artillery?" Wang Jingming could not believe this at all, and even felt that Zhang Maokai was deliberately trying to deceive him. However, seeing the shock in Wang Jingming's eyes, Zhang Maokai only felt that Lin Jinglan had committed a grave crime. His face twisted with excitement. "Oh, sir, you have no idea. That Lin Jinglan is incredibly bold. Before we set off, I heard with my own ears that he handcrafted them himself. Those things are still on the ship now, but rest assured, I haven't fired a single bullet. I can testify if necessary." Wang Jingming looked at Zhang Maokai before him, a flicker of coldness in his eyes. Regardless of whether what he said was true or false, his shameless demeanor alone made him feel deeply repulsed. But his years in the profession had conditioned him to mask his expressions, and instead of showing any dissatisfaction or anger, he smiled kindly. "Good. Your report is of great importance, and I will consider it carefully. Just make sure you don't mention this to anyone else, otherwise your credit for this discovery will be forfeited. Understand?" Wang Jingming worried that Zhang Maokai wouldn't be able to keep his mouth shut. They were currently abroad, and if any trouble arose because of this, it would be a headache. When Zhang Maokai heard major credit, he was extremely excited, feeling that he was highly valued by a powerful superior, and was just about to say more words of gratitude, but in the next second, he was ushered out of the room by Wang Jingming with a smile on his face. After Zhang Maokai left, Wang Jingming looked at the satellite phone that was still connected, knowing that Wang Bingi must have heard everything, and asked directly, "Old Wang, did you hear the conversation just now? Tell me your thoughts." However, on the other end of the line, Wang Bingi had not yet recovered his composure. He recalled the day of the inspection, how many times he had felt that those things were real, but because he heard it was made by a child, he had let them through by some stroke of fortune. He couldn't describe his current mood. He felt both careless and incredibly relieved. Better them than us. Regardless, as long as the Long Country citizens were safe, that was all that mattered. Besides, he truly hadn't expected that a teenager could actually transform a regular cargo ship into a warship, let alone perform such a brilliant maneuver that left the United States with no choice but to swallow the grievance. He had wondered why the Americans, who would never have gone to the rescue, ended up doing so. This kid is truly a stroke of genius. It's a delightful surprise. After figuring this out, Wang Bingi said solemnly, "This kid might truly be a genius, but don't act rashly for now. Just act as if you know nothing. Under the pretext of anti-piracy, arrange for 2 warships to escort them back to the country immediately. and I will send people to meet them and verify the facts. Hearing Wang Bingyi's arrangements, Wang Jingming also felt it was reasonable. From beginning to end, the United States had been played, and once they realized it, they would certainly retaliate against the Yunhai. So returning to the country was the top priority. As for the facts, just as Wang Bingyi said, it wouldn't be too late to investigate upon return. Just as he was about to hang up, oh, and that person named Zhang Maokai, keep a close eye on him, don't let any trouble happen. Tell Lin Jinglan before they depart, and deal with the person once they return to the country. After the two agreed, Wang Jingming immediately began arranging the escort warships, and the next morning he urged the Yunhai to set sail. The journey back was fast and just as boring, but the difference was, nerves were no longer as taut as they were on the way there. Making use of the plenty of time, I organized all the data on the Fokker frigate parsed by the system, which could be considered a learning process. Otherwise, relying on the system for everything would only make me a waste. When the journey was halfway through, Wang Bingyi personally led the warships to meet us. After interrogating everyone on the ship, the sequence of events was finally confirmed. Looking at the naval guns and machine guns he had inspected before, Director Wang Bingyi patted my shoulder. Good kid, you're a talent. You actually managed to pull the wool over my eyes. But it's a good thing, otherwise I wouldn't have known that our long country had such a genius youth. I pulled the corners of my mouth awkwardly, looked up at Wang Bingyi and said very sincerely, Station Chief Wang, I am truly sorry for all the trouble I've caused you. I wanted to continue apologizing, but was interrupted by a wave of Wang Bingyi's hand. All right, no need to say more. Remember, staying alive is more important than anything else. You don't need to worry about this matter. I have already communicated with my superiors, and there will be no further investigation. However, I will be taking away these naval guns on your ship. Upon hearing this, Lin Jinglan was overjoyed. Before Wang Bingyi's men could even move, he called over the crew to dismantle the equipment, moving all the naval guns and machine guns onto the warship. Wang Bingyi did not stay for any more small talk. After all, he still had a dozen pages of a self-criticism report to write. A few days later, the Yunhai finally returned home safely. Only when his feet touched the soil of his hometown did the heavy stone in Lin Jinglan's heart finally settle. In his great joy, Lin Jinglan waved his hand and hosted over a dozen tables for a banquet at the Lin residence, inviting everyone except Zhang Maokai. Unfortunately, just as everyone was enjoying the meal, footsteps suddenly sounded outside, heading straight for an officer. Accompanied by a squad of soldiers, the officer looked solemn, his eyes glinting with a sharp intensity. Seeing this scene, the Lin family members grew panicked. What was going on? Why were they being taken away right after returning? Didn't Station Chief Wang say the maritime incident would not be pursued? Lin Jinglan stepped forward immediately, walking quickly to the officer and asking seriously, What did my Lin Jinglan do? Why are you suddenly taking him away? If he has done something wrong, let me, his parent, go in his place. Other members of the Lin family in the room also shouted out, blocking me behind them. That's right, what did Lin Jinglan do wrong? How can you just take someone away without any reason? Our Lin Jinglan is not a bad person. Didn't you say the weapon modification issue wouldn't be pursued? Are you going to drag a child out and execute him? Lin Jinglan is a top scholar. Everyone chimed in one after another, leaving the lead officer stunned. How did he suddenly become the villain? He was simply acting under orders to take the young man before him for an inquiry. Could it be that someone the chief wants to see must be visited personally? The officer hurriedly spoke up, Everyone, don't be anxious. The chief has no malicious intent. It's just a routine questioning of young comrade Lin Jinglan. You don't need to worry, and you don't need to be afraid. We wouldn't just drag this little guy away to sell him off. Station Chief Wang Bingyi of the Haizhou Military Inspection Station was also present. However, the panic on everyone's faces did not subside. Although they were just ordinary civilian sailors, they knew that modifying weapons was a capital offense. Yet, their survival on this trip was entirely due to those very things. How could they let a child face the consequences alone? I sighed in relief from behind the crowd, stepped forward, and comforted them. Uncles, you don't need to worry. The leaders likely just have some questions to ask. Rest assured, it's impossible for them to just drag me out to the firing squad. I'll be back before long. After my gentle reassurance, everyone finally relaxed. I gave my father a look to put him at ease, and then left with the officer. When I arrived at Wang Bingyi's location, Wang Bingyi was already sweating profusely from being scolded. A red-faced old man in front of him looked like he wanted to reprimand him like a grandson. Seeing me walk in, the old man toned down his aggression slightly, then fixed his gaze on me, looking me up and down with curiosity. Then, he squinted slightly and smiled. You are quite an interesting little guy. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Yang Jinshan. I want to ask, what were you thinking? To actually dare to modify a cargo ship into a warship. Do you know that this alone is enough to get your whole family locked away? Although Yang Jinshan was smiling, his words made my heart tighten. I blinked and replied, Chief, you surely know better than I do that those waters are rampant with pirates. A foreign cargo ship had an incident there not long ago. And that was only what was reported. Who knows how many others weren't. If I hadn't modified the ship into a warship at that time, my family and everyone on board would have been buried by pirates. We were simply defending our own safety. Yang Jinshan stared at me with deep, piercing eyes. For a moment, then gave a soft chuckle. You have quite the nerve, little one, but it's fortunate that your gamble paid off. If you hadn't modified that firepower, I'm afraid I wouldn't be seeing you today. Although you've caused a massive problem, I am glad it is you who are alive. But I heard that you handcrafted the entire weapon system yourself, and it only cost a few tens of thousands? You wouldn't be lying to protect your family, would you? Chief, those weapons have nothing to do with my family. Before they were fired, they all thought they were models. That stuff might look intimidating, but in reality, the rate of fire and accuracy are quite poor. I didn't have the extra money for infrared sensors or phased array radar. Yang Jinshan nodded calmly, but internally, a storm was brewing. He had originally thought Wang Bingyi was exaggerating. Yang Jinshan nodded calmly, but internally, a storm was brewing. He had originally thought Wang Bingyi was exaggerating. I didn't expect this little guy to be genuinely capable. He could even handcraft a close-in weapon system. The more Yang Jinshan looked at him, the more satisfied he felt. After a moment of thought, he smiled and spoke, Kid, would you like to join our military? With your performance out at sea, plus a bit of pull from an old man like me, I could get you directly into the Navy. Becoming a major wouldn't be impossible. However, I shook my head, and Yang Jinshan paused for a second before continuing. Then do you want to join a military research institute? That's not out of the question either. Once you join, I'll allocate a private laboratory for you. As long as it's within reason, I'll ensure you have plenty of funding. That's a generous offer from an old man, right? I shook my head again. Yang Jinshan frowned deeper. So you want to use your technology to make money? That's doable too. It's just that the latest tech must be supplied to the military first, but the financial compensation will definitely be paid in full. Hearing this, I still shook my head. Yang Jinshan was truly baffled. The three paths he offered, one represented power, one represented prestige, and one represented wealth. Since I wanted none of these, what could I possibly want? At that moment, I spoke up, Chief, I want to continue attending university. Even though I have some talent, I want a more systematic and comprehensive education. Yang Jinshan nearly spat out his tea, his face filled with disbelief. Then, it suddenly hit him that the young man before him had only just finished high school. Yet, this kid could handcraft and refit warships himself. Professors at school probably didn't even have this ability. Wouldn't going to school just be a waste of time and talent? Entering the workforce directly would allow for faster progress, but seeing my determined expression, he decided to show respect. Going to university is fine, but I wonder if the Lonka University, University of Science and Technology, can meet your requirements? Hearing this, I couldn't help but brighten up. In my previous life, because of my father's wishes, I applied to Qingbei, but since binding with the system after my rebirth, I felt that Lonka University was a better fit for me. It's just that the timing of my rebirth was unfortunate. Applications for Lonka University had already closed back then. Now, hearing Yang Jinshan say this, I couldn't help but get excited. Sir, do you mean that I can get into Lonka University? Of course you can, though it will take a little effort on my part. But you, kid, have to agree to one condition of mine. No problem. As long as it doesn't violate my morals and is something I can do, sir. Just name it. Yang Jinshan laughed heartily upon hearing this and then patted me on the shoulder. What an interesting kid. I won't beat around the bush. Recently, the Americans, along with the countries surrounding our long kingdom, have been getting bolder and bolder. They think that our current coastal defense is weak and we can't do anything about them. So, the higher-ups have approved 1.3 billion to buy 3 Project 1135 frigates from the Maoxiong Russian side. I want you to come along and take a look to see if the Russians are trying to palm off defective goods on us. As Yang Jinshan spoke, his eyes dimmed. In the past, the Long Kingdom had suffered at the hands of those Russian guys. Back then, the Long Kingdom was in urgent need of advanced weaponry, yet most of the weapons the Russians sold them were more famous than they were effective, and they were relegated to second-line status before long. That is why he held such high expectations for the young man before him. Although the Long Kingdom was not short on defense industry talent, if you asked about someone who could single-handedly handcraft a close-in weapon system. Truth be told, he couldn't think of a single one. However, listening to Yang Jinshan now, I couldn't help but frown. Spending such a huge amount of money to buy outdated, old-fashioned frigates, and only getting 3 of them, isn't that a huge loss? A glimmer of ambition rose in my eyes. 1.3 billion would be better spent on me. I could provide the Long Kingdom with 10 Foch-class frigates. Yang Jinshan and Wang Bingyi standing nearby looked like they had just heard something shocking. The two were stunned on the spot, unable to utter a word for a long time. Lin Jinglan, are you drunk back at home? Are you talking nonsense here? Station Chief Wang exclaimed. I am serious. Since the chief is here, how would I dare to boast? As I argued with Wang Bingyi, Yang Jinshan spoke up. Good lad, I underestimated you. You've got some guts, but anyone can boast. It costs nothing to open your mouth. Anyone can say it. But tell me, why should I believe you? While I was at sea, under the guidance of Ambassador Wang Jinglan, I personally boarded a Foch-class frigate to take a look. On the way back, I studied it, and I have already compiled the basic blueprints and technical specifications. If you don't believe me, I can bring out the blueprints and technical details, and you can have someone vet them. Although the performance might not be identical in every way, it would definitely not be weak. Because I couldn't expose the existence of the system, I kept my statement very conservative. In reality, they would be exactly the same as the ones from the Americans. At most, I just modified the appearance. Before Yang Jinshan could speak this time, Wang Bingyi asked impatiently, Kid, you didn't steal the blueprints from the US, did you? Station Chief Huang. How can you call technology theft? I'm just referencing and learning. Besides, their core technology. How could I possibly steal it just by taking a glance? This is something I've painstakingly researched every step of the way. The room suddenly fell silent. Wang Bingyi stopped arguing with me, but his eyes were still filled with deep suspicion. The boy in front of him was a genius. But even a genius has their limits, right? Developing a Foch-class frigate in just over 10 days. How could this be possible? Fine, I'll arrange for people to verify the technical documents right now. If it passes, this 1.3 billion is yours. As long as you can complete it, I, an old man, guarantee I'll apply for a major commendation for you. It's just that this job needs a deadline, 10 years, 15 years at most. What do you think? Hearing this, a trace of a smile surfaced in my eyes. The Foch-class frigate. I had basically mastered it on the way here. Are you teasing me again, sir? 10 years? By the time it's made, the opportunity will have passed long ago. 1 year is all it takes, or give me 2 more years, and I can even get an aircraft carrier built for you. But the personnel, materials, and funding must not be lacking. As soon as these words were out, Yang Jinshan and Wang Bingyi's eyes widened in shock and disbelief. Yang Jinshan felt like he had been played by this little kid. He had thought the frigate project was promising before, but now that he said this, he wondered if he had been dazzled by empty promises, believing a teenager's words today. But since he had already put his word out there, he had to bite the bullet and say, Little guy, I'll take your words as the recklessness of youth. After you build the frigate, we'll talk. Having said his piece, he prepared to send me off. However, I didn't rush to leave, but scratched my head in embarrassment. Chief, there's one more thing I need to tell you. As you know, school is starting soon, and building a frigate will require a massive amount of time. So I need you to communicate with the school. My class attendance might be quite irregular. Furthermore, I need an independent research institute. I will notify you when I need personnel and materials. I stated all my demands in one breath. Yang Jinshan agreed to this readily. After all, with such a massive project on the table, it would seem petty to fuss over these small things. But there were some things he had to make clear. There is no problem with any of this. Feel free to ask for whatever you need. But remember, kid, I want results, not processes. Don't get halfway through, and then try to pull a disappearing act. Wang Bingyi looked at me with eyes full of both helplessness and emotion, followed by a long sigh. Kid, work hard. If you really manage to build those 10 frigates, you will be the new father of naval defense, the founder of our long nation's new generation frigates. You might even be featured in future textbooks. A few days later, the start of the semester at Long Science University arrived. There was finally news regarding the blueprints and documents Yang Jinshan had taken for verification. Perhaps because the higher-ups saw the value in the designs, Yang Jinshan was very generous and directly granted me an independent research institute near the university. It's just that the materials and equipment are still being prepared, so I'm happy to enjoy the peace for now. Although I had attended university in my previous life, that was Tsinghua or Peking University, which is completely different from Long Science University, where everything is under semi-military management. Not long after I sat down in my class, a middle-aged man wearing glasses entered the classroom and walked straight to the podium, knocked on the table, and looked at everyone present with sharp eyes. My name is Li Shengxing, and I am your professor for the core military course. I know that back in high school you were all the pride of your respective schools, but here at Long Science University, you are nothing but ordinary students. From now on, for your core military course each semester, anything below 80 points will result in a demerit, and anything below 60 points will be formally recorded as a serious offense. Anyone with more than 4 such records will be directly expelled. Remember, Long Science University has no use for mediocrity, and this is not a place for you to slack off. With these words, the whole class was in an uproar. Every face was filled with disbelief. Expelled after 4 records? We never heard of this rule before we arrived. However, Li Shengxing didn't offer any extra explanation as he scanned the crowd. Next, everyone, briefly introduce yourselves and talk about your plans for the first semester. Let's start from this row. The decisive tone was overwhelming, but the students still walked to the podium one by one. They spoke of their ideals like researching technology, reviving the Long Nation, and such, speaking with grand ambitions. Li Shengxing commented as he listened, "Technology is not a fantasy. Once you finish studying aerodynamics, you will realize how foolish your words today were. Ideals can be spoken, but they must be backed by action. Otherwise, it's just empty talk. Empty words. You could put a potato on a keyboard and it would produce something better than what you just said." His sharp, sarcastic tone, his stern voice, and the sharpness flashing in his eyes left one student after another blushing with shame. Not a single person was able to hold their head up as they walked off the stage. It was soon my turn, and I walked calmly to the podium. My name is Lin Jinglan. My plan for the first semester is to simply build a frigate. As for my goal, I aim for it to surpass a frigate. I said every word clearly and forcefully. Youth is wasted without a bit of audacity, especially when I actually have the capability now. Indeed, Li Shengxing raised his eyelids. Out of all the students who had taken the stage, I was the first to have the guts to speak so realistically, which actually piqued his interest. "Student Lin Jinglan, is it? Do you know what the implications of that statement are?" "I do." Hearing this light-hearted response, a spark of annoyance flared up in Li Shengxing. Was this guy just grandstanding? But when he looked down at the student file in his hand, Li Shengxing was suddenly stunned. This student's college entrance exam score was far above the cutoff, but he had actually been admitted through a special military recommendation. There must be a reason for this that I'm not aware of. Li Shengxing nodded with a smile. "All right. Lin Jinglan, right? You've successfully made me remember you. Next student, please continue." Amidst the gazes of everyone looking at me like I was some kind of genius, I walked off the podium with my head held high. This really was a great way to show off. After class, I returned to the dormitory, but my roommates hadn't come back yet. I thought for a moment and took out paper and pen from my bag. Earlier in class, when I said my goal was to surpass a frigate, it wasn't just empty talk. It was because, ever since I analyzed the frigate, I had been harboring the idea of further optimizing its weapon systems. However, this involved the management of power units and almost every structural step. Reform was not that easy. Fortunately, I had the system in my mind which could process and deeply analyze the relevant data. Just as I was mentally sorting through this data, the system sent out a prompt. Detected warship weapon structure design. Self-testing in progress. Hearing the voice in my head, my heart skipped a beat, followed by a surge of ecstasy. I didn't expect the system to have such a function. That makes things much easier. Afterward, with the system's assistance, I optimized every aspect, including torpedoes, naval guns, close-in weapon systems, machine guns, and missile launchers. After the system's verification and processing, I began to write and draw rapidly on the paper. I don't know how much time passed. Just as I was about to finish, someone suddenly patted my hand. "What are you looking at?" I raised my eyes with a bit of irritation. I hate it when people bother me while I'm busy. But when I looked up, I was surprised to see Li Shengxing. "Professor Li, why are you here?" Li Shengxing glanced at the drawings on the table and said indignantly, "Do you have any idea what time it is? You didn't show up for the evening class meeting, so I thought something had happened to you." I scratched my head. "I'm sorry, Professor Li. I lost track of time while working, but you've come at just the right time. I've almost finished the weapon upgrade blueprints for the frigate. Could you take a look and see if there's anything else I can add?" Hearing this, Li Shengxing frowned. What did I just hear? Warship weapon upgrade blueprints? Could this kid be making up excuses for skipping class? But if he was going to make an excuse, he should have come up with a better one. What is this? If one could come up with weapon blueprints in a single afternoon, then what does that make those of us who spend years or even decades in the lab doing research? Li Shengxing picked up the drawings on the table, ready to lecture me, but as he looked at the dense data, formulas, and design schematics on the pages, Li Shengxing's eyes widened. After a few more looks, his eyes grew even rounder. The aerodynamic section was absolutely flawless. There were even parts he couldn't understand. Li Shengxing stared for a long time. Finally, he took a deep breath and looked at me in shock. How were these theoretical figures derived? And these engineering principles and mechanics, how did you calculate them? One must know that Li Shengxing himself works in scientific research, and combined with his teaching, he barely managed to keep a grasp on this data, but this little guy in front of him, it was simply incredible. But soon, he thought of something else. Wait, you said you wanted to build a warship today. Are you serious about that? I nodded heavily. Li Shengxing watched my determined gaze and couldn't help but feel his breathing start to quicken. Then he looked at me with anticipation. Perhaps I could be your assistant. Then thank you, Professor Li. The time that followed was simple. As the Research Institute's equipment and materials arrived one after another, and the time I had for class grew less and less, spending almost all of my time in the laboratory. Now I had the money, the people, the materials, and the equipment. The work proceeded incredibly fast. 2 months later, I looked at the modified Fokker frigate before me and nodded with satisfaction. No, to be precise, it should be called the Dragon's Might warship now. On the day of the Dragon's Might's maiden sea trial, Yang Jinshan personally brought his team over, and even Wang Bingyi, all the way from Haizhou, rushed over to witness it. Looking at the majestic warship before them, everyone on the scene was filled with shock. I led them onto the ship and began the introduction. Everyone, please look here. This is the main naval gun launch area, and over there is the helicopter landing pad. Although our Dragon's Might warship draws inspiration from the Fokker frigate, it is 30% more powerful overall than the Fokker, with the most significant improvements being in its weaponry. Next, I will give everyone a demonstration. Soon, under my operation, an electronic voice broadcast echoed through the command room. Missile check in progress, check complete, launching missile. As the electronic voice faded, a circle of blue flame instantly burst forth. In almost the blink of an eye, the missile broke away from the launch area and surged forward at incredible speed. Everyone could even feel the terrifying pressure generated by the missile's rapid flight. Both Wang Bingyi and Yang Jinshan wore expressions of sheer excitement on their faces, their eyes fixed intently ahead, almost ready to scream on the spot. In just an instant, the missile reached the target ship ahead. With a deafening boom and a burst of blinding light, a mushroom cloud rose into the air, and the heat, mixed with the scent of the explosion, instantly blew the once intact target ship to pieces. Everyone on the scene was dumbfounded. I looked at the screen. The speed and specifications should be around Mach 1.5. Wang Bingyi, a grown man, actually burst into tears on the spot. With the Dragon's Might warship, the Dragon Kingdom could finally stand tall on the seas. Perhaps this young man before them would truly, as he said, become the father of the Dragon Kingdom's naval defense.